I want to tell you about a couple of things that I used to believe. One, universal health care would never work in America. Also, the Canadian healthcare system was terrible. Two, socialism equals communism. And I held both of those beliefs for a significant portion of my life. And it wasn't because I was stupid, and it wasn't because I wasn't paying attention. Because those beliefs were handed to me by my family, by my culture, by the specific American information environment that I grew up in. Cultural osmosis, the stuff that just gets in without you ever deciding to let it in. And then I joined the Army. And in basic training, they took away our electronics. We had no phones, no TV, no internet. No more cultural osmosis machine running in the background. And I did what I've always done when left alone with time and silence. I read books, history books, politics books, whatever I could get my hands on, because Natipedia was going to learn something regardless of what you put in front of him. And somewhere in those books, in a military barracks with no phone, in the specific silence that happens when you take all of the noise away, I had a moment where I went, hang on a minute, that's not what they told me. You see, because the Canadian healthcare system is not terrible. It has problems, sure, but what system doesn't? But it just doesn't work, and America should never try it, is not a conclusion the evidence supports. And socialism does not equal communism. Social Security is socialism. Medicare is socialism. The VA, the institution that took care of veterans just like me and my dad before me, is socialism. The public library, where I spent a majority of my days off from school as a kid, is socialism. The country that told me socialism meant communism built its entire middle-class infrastructure on socialist principles. And the people who told me it was communism were the same exact people who did not want to pay for any of it. So I started asking a question that I haven't really been able to stop asking ever since. Who put those beliefs in my head? And why? Because you see, the answer has a name. So welcome to SideQuest Sunday. I'm Nate, and this is part 1 of How Did We Get Here? And all of this starts with a man named Edward Bernays. He wrote it all down, all the way back almost 100 years ago. And hey, if you're watching on YouTube, welcome to the lobby. Please be sure to like this video, hit subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss a drop. Brand new episodes each and every Monday and Thursday. Let's get into it. So, Edward Bernays, born in 1891 in Vienna. He was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. Yes, that's Sigmund Freud. You see, Bernays grew up watching his uncle develop theories about the unconscious mind, about the drives and desires and fears that operate beneath the surface of human behavior, about the irrational machinery that actually runs the decisions we think we're making rationally. And at some point, Bernays had a thought that his uncle, being a scientist, probably didn't have. What if you could use this commercially? He moves to America. He invented the field of public relations, and he wrote a book in 1928 called Propaganda. And in that book, he laid out plainly, clearly, without apology, exactly how to manufacture public opinion. This is the opening paragraph. The conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses is an important element in democratic society. Those who manipulate this unseen mechanism of society constitute an invisible government, which is the true ruling power of our country. He wrote that in the first paragraph, my friends, then published it under his own name almost 100 years ago. He wasn't hiding it, he was very proud of it. He believed that mass democracy required a class of people who understood how to manage what he called the engineering of consent, because ordinary people, in his view, could not be trusted to make decisions based on rational analysis of facts. They needed to be guided, and he was going to be one of the guides. Bro. This man wrote the manual, published it, and then spent the next 60 years using it on all of us. So let me show you what the manual looks like in practice. Because Bernays didn't just theorize, he executed. Receipt 1, the American breakfast. In the 1920s, most Americans didn't eat a big breakfast. Most of the time, their breakfast consisted of black coffee, maybe a roll, or an English muffin. Bernays was hired by Beechnut Packing Company. They sold bacon, and they wanted to sell even more bacon. A lesser mind would have run ads saying, "Hey, buy more bacon." Bernays didn't run ads. He went to a doctor, just a single doctor, and asked him a question. Would a heavier breakfast be better for the American worker? And the doctor said, yeah, probably. Bernays then sent that doctor's opinion to 5,000 doctors across America, asked them to co-sign it. Most of them did, because why wouldn't they? It seemed reasonable enough. Then Bernays went to the newspapers and announced, 5,000 doctors recommend a hearty breakfast of bacon and eggs for the American worker. Not an advertisement, just a news story, sourced to 5,000 doctors. And you know what? Bacon and eggs became the American breakfast, and it's still the quintessential American breakfast. A PR man manufactured a cultural institution in approximately 4 steps and charged a pork company for it. Receipt 2, cigarettes. In 1929, the American Tobacco Company hired Bernays. Women smoking in public was considered taboo, considered unladylike, socially unacceptable, which meant half the potential market wasn't buying cigarettes. Bernays' solution was not to argue with the taboo, so he reframed the cigarette. He contacted a psychoanalyst, leveraging his uncle's network, and asked what cigarettes might symbolize for women. An analyst said, a symbol of the penis, male power. Bernays filed that away and then organized a group of debutantes to march in the 1929 New York Easter Parade, smoking cigarettes. He tipped off the press in advance, told them the women would be lighting torches of freedom. The very next day, headlines across America, women smoking as an act of feminist liberation. The sales numbers for women's cigarettes went up almost immediately. He gave women lung cancer and called it emancipation. I just seriously need you to sit with that one for a second. He didn't sell a product. He manufactured a cultural meaning for a product. He made smoking a cigarette feel like a political act, like identity, like belonging, like freedom. And it worked. Because you know what? It always works. When you attach an identity to a product or a policy or a politician, people stop evaluating it rationally and they defend it emotionally. Because now it's not about the product. It's about who they are. Receipt 3. Guatemala. And this is where it stops being funny. In 1954, Bernays was hired by the United Fruit Company. The United Fruit Company owned enormous tracts of land in Guatemala. The democratically elected president of Guatemala, Jacobo Arbenz, had implemented land reform. He was redistributing unused land to poor farmers, including land owned by United Fruit. And you know what? United Fruit didn't really like that. So they hired Bernays. And Bernays ran a PR campaign that reframed Arbenz, a democratically elected president, implementing land reform as a communist threat to American interests. He planted stories in American newspapers. He arranged for journalists to take tours of Guatemala with United Fruit as their guide. He manufactured the consent for what came next. In 1954, the CIA overthrew Arbenz. A democratically elected government replaced with a military dictatorship that the United States installed because a PR man convinced American media that land reform was communism. And the decades of violence and instability that followed that coup, the civil war that killed over 200,000 Guatemalans, started with Edward Bernays writing a press release for a fruit company. That's not spin, my friends, and that's not marketing. That's manufacturing consent for regime change. And he wrote the manual. Jesus Christ, Steve, what? Steve says, a fruit company. A man overthrew a democracy for a fruit company. Yes, dude, for a fruit company. And some of it is in the history books. But a lot of people might not know this because the people who benefit from you not knowing it have been using Bernays techniques to make sure you don't. Okay, well, just don't even say anything and just leave. Oh well. How about some ad reads? This episode of SideQuest Sunday is brought to you by Manufactured Consent. Do you have a product, policy, or political position that the public would reject if presented with the honest facts? Manufactured Consent can help. Simply tell us what conclusion you need people to reach, and we'll work backwards from there. Manufactured Consent specializes in attaching your product to an identity people already hold, so they defend your product like they defend themselves. Finding a trusted authority to endorse your position, so it arrives as fact rather than opinion. Reframing your opponent's legitimate position as a threat to everything your audience loves, so they reject it before they can examine it. Manufactured Consent has been used successfully on breakfast, cigarettes, universal health care, the definition of socialism, and at least one democratically elected government. Results include a population that holds your preferred beliefs and believes they arrived at them independently. Manufactured Consent, the conscious and intelligent manipulation of the organized habits and opinions of the masses. Our co-founder, Edward Bernays, said that, and we've been using it ever since. You're welcome. And hey, before we get back into it, just a quick pause for my audio listeners over on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're currently getting your podcasts. If you're enjoying the show, do me a favor. Please give it a follow so new episodes land automatically in your feed. And if you've got a moment, be sure to leave a rating and a review. It genuinely helps independent podcasts just like mine survive. That's it. Back to it. Now, I want to tell you something that I genuinely debated including in this episode. And not because it isn't true, because it is. Every single word of what I'm about to say to you is documented. But because it's the kind of thing that sounds like a conspiracy theory until you look at the sources. And the sources are right there. Joseph Goebbels, Nazi Germany's Minister of Propaganda, kept Edward Bernays' books on his shelf. He studied them. He used them. Bernays found out about this. And this right here is the thing that gets me. He was disturbed by it. and not because the techniques had been misused, but because they'd been used by the wrong people. Bernays believed, and I mean genuinely believed, that manipulation was acceptable when it was in service of the right goals. His goals, democratic goals, American goals. He just never fully reckoned with the obvious problem. The techniques do not care about your goals. The same exact tools that sell bacon and eggs sell cigarettes as liberation, sell land reform as communism, sell a political movement as a return to greatness. The tools are neutral. The intentions are anything but. But once the tools exist, once they're documented, published, available to anyone who wants to learn them, the intentions of the inventor do not control the intentions of the user. Bernays wrote the manual, and Goebbels read it. And the techniques that manufactured the great American breakfast were studied by the very man who manufactured the consent for the Holocaust. And my friends, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's a documented historical fact. And it's sitting right there in a book published in 1928. And here's where it connects to right now. The techniques Bernays documented in 1928 are the foundation of modern advertising, political consulting, cable news strategy, even social media algorithms. Every political campaign that has ever told you that the other side is a threat to your identity, not just wrong, not just mistaken, but a threat to who you are. That's all Bernays. Every news organization that has discovered that outrage drives more engagement than information, that's Bernays. Every algorithm that shows you more of what makes you angry because angry people stay on the platform longer, that's Bernays. Scaled, automated, running 24 hours a day on a device in your back pocket. The Canadian healthcare is terrible belief that I held for years, that was a specific and documented campaign by the American healthcare and insurance industry to make universal healthcare seem un-American. They didn't argue with facts. They attached an identity to the position. Real Americans don't want government healthcare. Real Americans are independent. Real Americans don't want to be like Canada. And it worked. On me, probably on you, probably on a lot of people that we know for years. And it kept working on me until I was sitting in a military barracks all the way back in 2006 with no electronics, reading history. The socialism equals communism belief, that was a specific campaign born during the Red Scare, accelerated through McCarthyism, and maintained as a reflexive cultural assumption for 7 decades. They didn't argue with facts there either. They attached an identity to the position. Real Americans aren't socialists. Socialism is un-American. Socialism is communism, and communism is the enemy. Therefore, the VA is freedom. Medicare is freedom. Social Security is freedom. The public library is freedom. And the people who fund the campaigns that tell you socialism is communism are the same exact people who don't want to pay for any of those things. Bernays wrote that playbook almost 100 years ago, and we're still living inside it. And Steve's back. Steve says, so every time someone calls something socialist to make you reject it, that's a technique. That's deliberate? Yes, buddy. Yeah. Steve says he needs to go think about some things. And bud, that's the entire point. So, I've just told you that a man wrote a manual in 1928 for manufacturing public opinion. He used it to make bacon and eggs the quintessential American breakfast, to sell cigarettes as feminist liberation, to manufacture the consent for a CIA coup in Guatemala. His techniques were studied by Joseph Goebbels, and the direct descendants of those techniques are running in your very pocket right now. And the natural response to all of that information is either 1, complete paralysis. If everything is manufactured, then nothing is real, and I can't trust anything, so I'm just going to go lie down. Kind of like what Steve did. Or 2, the very thing I did all the way back in 2006 on a military base with no electronics and a stack of history books. Ask where the belief came from. Not every belief, not all at once, just when something lands in your head and it feels like it's always been there. Ask, did I arrive at this, or did someone put it there? Because here's the thing about Bernays' techniques. They work best in the dark. The moment you can see them, the moment you can name the mechanism, they lose power. And not completely, not immediately, but enough. Enough to go, wait, hold on a minute. Who benefits from me believing this? That question, that single question, is the thing Bernays spent his entire career trying to make sure you never asked. So ask it anyway. And this has been part 1 of How Did We Get Here? Part 2 is coming. It's called Morning in America, and it's about my dad, a Vietnam veteran and a biker who believed in Ronald Reagan with the kind of conviction that doesn't bend for receipts. And it's about why that makes complete sense once you understand what Edward Bernays built. And I'll leave you with this. History doesn't repeat, but it sure does rhyme. And the rhyme? Well, it started here. All the way back in 1928. Edward Bernays wrote it all down. We just didn't read it. Today's episode of the Average Joe Nerdcast is also brought to you by the Torches of Freedom. Are you trying to sell something that people would reject on its merits? The Torches of Freedom rebranding service can help. Simply tell us what you're selling, and we'll find the identity it threatens. And then we'll sell your product as the antidote to that threat. Examples of the Torches of Freedom in action. Cigarettes, rebranded as feminist liberation. Removing healthcare from workers, rebranded as freedom from government. Cutting programs that help poor people, rebranded as fiscal responsibility. Opposing living wages, rebranded as protecting small business. And our most popular package, taking money from working people and giving it to the wealthy. Rebranded as economic freedom that will trickle down to everyone. Eventually. Just keep waiting. The Torches of Freedom. We don't change what the thing is. We change what it means. And that's going to do it for this first of a 4-parter Side Quest Sunday. All sources for this episode will be in the show notes. And before I get out of here, if you're on YouTube, please be sure to like this video, hit subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss a drop. And if you're on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you're currently listening, please be sure to follow the show and leave a rating and drop a review if you've got just 2 minutes. Word of mouth and reviews are how independent podcasts just like mine grow, and every single one of them matters. Then, come find us over in the lobby. That's the Average Joe Nerdcast private Facebook group. I'll drop the link for it in the show notes, or you can head straight over to Facebook right now and in the search bar, just type Average Joe Nerdcast the lobby, and you will find the group. Then tell me, what belief do you hold that you've never actually examined? And I'm not telling you to say that to make you feel bad, just as a starting point for good conversation. Please, drop it in the thread. A real quick shout out to My Player 2. Thank you for letting me work through this one and for not pointing out that I'm using communication techniques to convince people to examine communication techniques. The irony is noted. I've been Nate. Stay gold, Nerd bold. And always remember, he wrote it all down. And now you know where to look. I'll catch you on the next one.
Game over.